If you have ever gone to buy, or for that matter sell, a used centrifugal concentrator or trommel, you have likely spoke with Savona equipment. But over the last several years, they have moved into selling new. Now don't worry, the thousands of used and surplus equipment on their website isn't going anywhere. But today we are focusing on their partnership with Tst Concentrators and their new placer mining equipment lines. Joining us today, Jordan Downey, the sales manager for Savona Equipment, owner of Tst Concentrators Incorporated, and my brother. Welcome to Crowns and Specials. The voice of industry starts now. Welcome to Crowns and Specials, Jordan.
Thank you, Jared.
Okay, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about a couple of the new lines, sort of on the placer side of mining that Savona Equipment has moved into. Just what are the two products that we're going to cover today?
Today we're going to discuss the St Trommels, the Savona Equipment St Trommel line,
Okay.
and also the Tst Concentrators.
So Savona, they've 30 years of used. Like you said, you heard in the intro, it's I think anybody in the mining industry, and certainly anybody who's bought used, has spoken and checked out Savona. So now, over the last few years, moving into the new, why is that move happening?
We moved into kind of niche products for new equipment. Like you mentioned, we focus on used, but sometimes there's no used product available, and there's certain products that we've had the ability to produce and produce well. So the St Trommel line was one of them. It was very difficult to find used trommels, good used trommels on the market when we want them. So, and then for the Tst Concentrators, again, it was hard to find used ones when the customers needed them. The opportunity came up to produce these concentrators and market them and sell them. So we took that opportunity, and they fit together. You can build a good, solid placer plant out of those two products.
Yeah, I guess like you said, you got to find the used ones when the customer needs it. Then you got to find size, and you got to check condition, and so there's all those moving parts that goes into it, right?
Right, and also multiple units.
Right.
Often on the used market, there's a demand for multiple units for a plant. You have to source it you could need it anywhere in the world, whether it be somewhere in Asia, Africa, the Americas, and they need it now or in a few weeks. And so you might have one, but you have to find multiples of it.
Right.
So with certain products, now having the ability to supply multiple units is a great feature.
Yeah. Now Tst Concentrators, and we're going to unpack them more as we go on, but it is a separate company. You're with Savona Equipment, and you're the owner of Tst. What does that partnership look like?
So I've been with Savona Equipment which is a family business, for probably approximately 15 years, and I started focusing on buying and selling placer equipment. So I had some experience selling Tst Concentrators, used ones, over the years, and there was a high demand for used ones. The opportunity came to start producing and selling Tst Concentrators. So I took that opportunity and partnered with Savona Equipment. So I look after the manufacturing, production, and Savona Equipment is the marketing, supply directly to the customers, installation, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. And so going further into the Tst, what is sort of the history and a little more about that brand and that product?
The Tst were developed in the early 80s, and they were developed specifically for placer gold recovery. So super fine, ultra fine placer gold recovery. Sluice boxes typically can lose 30 to 70% of the gold, especially if there's a high percentage of fines. So the Tst was developed specifically to recover that lost gold. And we'll have some examples of that later.
Okay, a lot of people watching this will understand what a centrifugal concentrator is, but I think it's important to put into context why you actually use a concentrator, which you touched on a little bit earlier, but just expand on that a little bit more.
Okay. So as you can see in the photo, there's a sluice box at the end of the trommel, and this typically a wash plant, whether it's a Trommel wash plant or vibrating screen wash plant, they are relying on sluice boxes to recover the gold. Sluice boxes do a great job of recovering coarse gold, but not such a great job at recovering fine gold, especially if it's like a flat, flaky type of gold that tends to float away. That's where the high G comes into play. So here we took the tailings from this trommel and we ran it with buckets. We ran it through this little test P5 test plant, and the high G will recover that fine gold that was lost by the sluice box.
Oh, okay. So you're actually gathering up everything that the trommel produces. Sorry, what did you call it? The
Tailings.
The tailings.
Yeah.
You're gathering up the tailings and then reprocessing them through the
That's
concentrator.
right.
Yeah. So how did they? And I've got a chance to look at them. They're sort of neat, but they're also a closed-in unit, so you can't exactly see. So we've got a video that I want to kind of, if you could walk us through it a bit, to show sort of. If you look at it from the outside, there is no moving parts, but there certainly is. So can you explain what we're about to see in this video?
So this is a water test coming out of the factory, but you'll see a pipe on the top. That's the slurry infeed. So that's where the slurry containing the fine gold, other heavy metals and minerals, that's where it gets fed in. It goes down that pipe and then it starts to work its way up. There's a spinning bowl and it starts to work its way up the edge of that bowl. The heavy material gets trapped in the rings.
Oh, okay.
And all of the tailings go out a discharge launder.
So these are the rings that you're talking about inside, right?
That is the spinning bowl. That's a fluidized bowl. The slurry feed goes into the bottom. There's a distribution plate, and then it starts working its way up that bowl.
Yeah.
The heavy material gets retained in those rings, and then the tailings just go over the top and out the discharge launder. When you shut it down, you stop it and then you flush the concentrate and the heavies that are trapped in those rings, and it gets flushed out a concentrate drain.
Right, and then
That just takes a few minutes to do that flush.
okay, so from the high G, you get the concentrate, and then what are you doing with the concentrate after you get that?
So just so you know, just so it's like easy for you to think about it, that bowl is full of concentrate, gold, heavy metals, and gravels.
Yeah.
That material is usually in a drum or a pail, depending on how big the concentrator is. You take that material and you run it through your gold room. So you have to separate out. The concentrate that comes from a concentrator is not just pure gold. It's mixed with other gravels, and when you shut it down, those rings are full. So whatever is in them, that's what you've got as a concentrate. There'll be a high percentage of gold in it.
Oh, okay.
Because you've been concentrating and upgrading and adding gold to that for an hour or a day. So, but then you have to take that material and do further separation. So you have to actually separate that gold out of that material. And for that, you need a concentrating table.
And then the end result after that, so you've gone trommel, sluice box, concentrator, and now you've moved into a table, and then your end result is this.
This is actually gold from a high G concentrator that's been separated with a concentrating table. So this is an example of the size of gold that you would recover with a concentrator. This is actually fairly coarse. Some of the gold you recover from a high G concentrator, it's like paint. It's so fine. It's just really, really minuscule.
You touched on it very briefly earlier, but I wanted to go into a little more about where the concentrator is used. Probably an easier one is asking if there is active projects for it right now. right?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you kind of go through a couple of those projects where their high Gs are in operation or being put into operation, and sort of where they fit in the system?
So really, any placer project, well, any project that has free gold, you can use a high G concentrator. So if it has fine free gold, you want to install a high G concentrator. So a few examples of that would be, there's a project in Colombia. They were using a sonic drill for sampling their project, and they were running those samples through a high G P12 test plant. So, and that has a vibrating wash screen, and then it goes from there and it feeds into the concentrator, and it did very well. It proved up the project. The nice thing about it is, with other sampling methods, you are only getting possibly the coarse gold, and you're missing the fine gold. So with a high G, you know exactly what you have. If it can be recovered with gravity, the high G is going to recover it. So you know that just by running those samples.
When I was looking through the files, actually, we'll bring it up here. I saw one that looked like it was being put into service. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so there's this one here it's actually being installed with an excavator. It's a small one, it's a P12. Behind it, you can see a P5 test plant. So this company actually purchased the P5 test plant first. They proved their samples. They proved that the high G could do the job, recover their fine gold that they were losing with other methods, sluice box and jig. And so then they upsized into a P12, which was a small test, small production unit. So.
And then you've got the third one I wanted to just bring up, and that was, it was sort of, there was a, we'll bring it up here, it's sort of in a hole, and what's that setup?
So that's actually a gemstone plant, but they have gold in their ore. So they use the high G concentrator after the jig. So the hutch material from the jigs will flow to the concentrator to recover the fine gold.
Okay.
That's going to be coming online here any day. So we should have some good footage and results from that project.
Yeah, and you'd probably be putting that on websites like Savona Equipment's website and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once we get a video, we'll get that up on the web so people can see what these do. It's hard to get footage sometimes because it's secrets. It's the gold. It's placer gold mining. You don't want to be giving away your secrets.
Mining, as much as it's advanced, it hasn't changed in that sense. So when you were looking through where it's being active, where it's active now, where it's installed, you're obviously seeing all these different sizes. Is there, now you have specific product lines. There's a product line of high G concentrators, and then there's sizes. What are the sizes that are within each, or the model numbers?
Okay, so the P5 test plant that's the smallest. So it's a little vibrating screen on it. It's a little dual machine, and it can do a few hundred pounds per hour, usually running bucket samples through it. Then it goes to the 12-inch, so it's a 12-inch bowl, and it's called a P12. And that one can come with a vibrating screen or without. So with a vibrating screen, you can do bucket samples. We saw it earlier. They're running drill samples.
Right.
You can run it as a small production unit. Without the screen, you can install it in a small production plant that's already sizing the material for it, or you can install it in a gold room. Then you go up to true production units, which are a P21 and a P40, and those do up to 30, 60 plus tons per hour. And if you have a plant that you need to run 300 ton per hour, then you can run multiples of, say, a P40. So you just run a bank of them.
Yeah, that was my other, and I saw that as well in the material you sent me. We'll bring that up now and show what we're looking at. So what you're actually doing is you're just, well, what you just said, I'm just mirroring it back to you, you're taking your largest size and then just putting them multiple units together to process it. Now what we're seeing here, that's the operation, right? You've got 4 units put into a system.
Yes, that is 4 P40s in a system. And I think that plant, I think the max throughput or head ore was 500, maybe 600 yards per hour. And so only a percentage of that. So you feed a high G concentrator 4 millimeter minus. 6 millimeter minus, 6 millimeter is the max, 4 millimeter minus is recommended. So from that, say 500 tons per hour, you get maybe 30% of that. So that 30% is 4 millimeter minus. You feed all of that to the high G concentrators. So you might need a bank of them to process all that production. And then you can shut down one, keep and flush the con out of it,
Right.
and keep the other ones running. Or if you have 2, you can just shut one down, slow the feed down to the other, but you can keep your plant running. You don't have to shut down your whole operation to clean out.
So it allows you to have a continuous system. Could you do that with a small, like the smaller units too, or would that be kind of a different, like for testing off, they're just testing in small batches, then they want to look at it, they shut everything down, right? That'd be typical? So you'd only need that continuous system for large scale, is that right?
Large scale, or even, because there's quite a big jump from a P12, which does up to 10 ton per hour, to a P21, which does up to 30, or well, even higher, but 30 is kind of that maximum range where you're still getting the highest possible recovery.
Depending on your material.
So that's a big jump. So you might want to install 2 12-inch.
Right, I see. Okay, we dug into them. I think anybody who's interested in concentrators has got some good information. Savona, a few years ago, released the St Trommel. Without me being a Trommel expert, I've walked around lots of them. It's definitely seems it's a heavy duty version of a Trommel. Can you talk a little bit more about that product line and why Savona took that specific? There's lots of options, lots of people build Trommels. Why they brought that specific one to the market as a new unit?
So we brought that Trommel, the ST series Trommel, to the market because number one, it was hard to find good used Trommels. So we started looking for opportunities to build a good, solid, efficient Trommel that you could also customize the different applications. And so that's where the ST series Trommels came into being. You're right, there is quite a few options. Well, there's getting to be less Trommel options on the market, but a lot of them are for the main ones, for topsoil. And then there's kind of, there's elaborate gold mining systems, but it's a Trommel. You just want it to wash the material, scrub the material, the rocks need to come out, and they need to be clean. Like when you look at the tailings from the end of a Trommel drum, they need to be completely clean, washed of any kind of clays, or because that's where the gold is trapped in, right?
Right.
So so that's why we designed and built that Trommel. It's a very rugged, robust, heavy-duty design. You can customize it to different applications. It's the wear parts are very minimal, and it's very efficient. And we never sell parts for it and they're all over the world operating, and we never sell parts. They're just very simple to use and very heavy duty.
And I saw there's also shipping. You touched on it being all over the world. And obviously shipping is a major component in getting these to these locations. Some of them are very remote locations. And it's sort of a unique product in the way that it can, even the big one, can fit right inside a trailer. I mean, I've seen them being shipped on trucks, but this one can also go right inside a sea can, a shipping container, right, to go anywhere in the world. That's correct, right?
Yeah, not the largest. The largest one, typically we can't break that down into ship into a container. But the ST70, which is the second largest, that one goes into a high cube shipping container, and we've shipped them all over the world like that. The larger ones, it's a bit trickier.
Right.
Again, we can customize them. So the largest one, the standard size, is the ST120, which has a 5-foot diameter drum, but we can build them much bigger. And then it gets tricky to put those into a container.
Right. So going off of the different units that can be shipped in different ways, I wanted to go over sort of the 5, I think there's 5 different sizes of trommels, is that correct? Do you want to just give a quick rundown of the 5 models that Savona is actually offering?
So we have the ST10, which is our little test unit, mobile test unit. And then that's kind of its own little style of trommel because it's so small. It's got a little grizzly on it, and you can tow it around behind a side-by-side or a four-wheeler. And then you go into the small production units, which are the ST30, the ST50, and then you get into higher production units, which are the ST70, and then the ST120. All of those numbers are referring to the maximum efficient capacity.
Okay.
The capacity changes depending on the material you're working with, but we try to rate them as accurately as possible. So that's what those numbers represent. So those numbers are their yards per hour. So 10 yards per hour, 30 yards per hour, 50 yards per hour. Now the ST120, that one can be enlarged into a higher capacity unit. It's really, all of these can be customized per whatever is required for the specific project.
Okay.
But especially the ST120, it can be enlarged into, like, it has a 5-foot diameter drum. It can be enlarged into a 6 or even a 7-foot drum. So you might get 200, 300 yards per hour through a larger size.
There was kind of a double purpose for doing the concentrators and the trommels because they do work together. They're in the similar operations most of the time. There's always exceptions to the operations. But I wanted to take a quick look at some of where the St Trommels have been in action. We've actually got a video, I think it's from a Yukon placer project. So I'll bring that up to check that out. And what size of trommel is in operation on this one?
So this one was actually an ST70, which is a 48-inch drum. And this one was used on a gold project. You can see it has a sluice box there. This was actually one of the earlier models. It had, they call them like a New Zealand style screen drum. So it's got a longer screening section. We typically build them like this one shows, with a longer scrubbing section and a shorter screening section to make sure that that material those rocks are clean, like everything's washed off of it.
Oh, I see. Placer mining is obviously a global thing. It's all over. I think this one we're looking at now, this is from Latin America. Is that right?
It is, yeah. This one is actually in Guyana.
Okay.
And this is an ST50, and this is actually a good example of a trommel being used with a concentrator because the undersize from the screen was going over the sluice box, and then it was getting pumped to a centrifugal concentrator, and that was the fine gold recovery module. The other thing about this is we actually supplied that feeder used, so refurbished used. And that is a good piece of equipment to feed a trommel with, so you can regulate your feed.
Right. And so, okay, so sorry, you said this, what size is this that we're looking at right now?
That is an ST50, so that's a 50 yard an hour. Okay,
so if now we've covered going to the concentrator. If you're going, so that model, the ST50 you said? Now if you're matching up the right concentrator with the high G, tying it all together, which high G unit goes with that trommel?
Typically, you could use 2 P12 units, or you would use 1 P21.
Oh, okay.
The P21 is a little bit oversized. It's a little over capacity, but that's better than being under capacity. And if you want to expand your wash plant, then you could still use that P21, and you just have some capacity to spare, so to speak.
So you're showing examples where there's a feeder, there's a trommel, it matches up with this concentrator. So circling back to Savona equipment, 30 years of used equipment. Now, how is it all working, or what's that added value when you're now offering all this, all the different parts and pieces, new and used?
So normally when we're putting a plant together, or our client is putting a plant together, if they're using our St Trommel and a high G, there's all this other equipment that they require. So, and we supply all that equipment. We supply pumps and screens and gold recovery equipment, gold room equipment, generators, and most of that equipment we source used. Probably 90% of the time. Sometimes if we don't have it, then we might have to source new. But we usually have a used, rebuilt, refurbished option, and we can complete a whole plant with that equipment.
Yeah. So your use, obviously the hope is that it's going to be more cost effective, but now you're sort of moving to the next stage where the customer's not stuck with, okay, well, these were my only options. Now you've got these new options if you can't get it, or if it's a timing thing, now that new can be put into place, still within that used system, right? And that leads me to another part of it is, if someone actually needs this equipment, what sort of timelines in actually getting it supplied, local, Canadian or global?
So typically with new equipment, with our St Trommels or the high G concentrators, we can get them out in 4 to 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Which is super fast
Yeah.
in our industry. So it's all built in Canada. So if it has to go to somewhere in Africa, for example, it could take 8 weeks shipping time, but we can build it and deliver it usually within 4, 8, a maximum of 12 weeks.
Yeah. I'm glad we kind of got to sit. We've had a conversation. You were on the podcast before, and we kind of touched on it. But this is really peeling back all the layers of it. So I'm glad that Savona was wanting to do this, because I think there's a lot of information floating around, but we're trying to sort of condense it so that somebody can come on here, and that's why we're doing the Crowns and Specials. So I hope you got to cover sort of what you wanted to, and we should let people know where they can actually go to find all this equipment and all these options and contact you and that. So the website, SavonaEquipment.com, I don't know how many thousands of pieces of equipment are on there. But they can also reach out to, what would be the best email if someone's reaching out to try to get direct information about what we've covered today?
So the best email to reach us at, or reach me at, is sales@SavonaEquipment.com.
Okay. And then there's lots of social media, there's lots of videos, it's all that out there as well. The other thing that I would add is it's nice to see, sometimes when we're trying to get information, you're trying to show what it can do, but there's not a lot of examples. And here we actually were able to walk through some of these projects. Like you said, mining is still a fairly private industry, a lot, especially these smaller operations. Yeah. People can watch it, see it's working. So I hope it's good information. I hope you got to kind of cover some of the ground that you wanted to as well.
Yeah, it was great, and I hope we can do more of this as we get more projects developed with this equipment, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be back on one day to talk about more of our products.
Thank you for watching another edition of Crownsman Specials. If you want to get your product unpacked on the show, please reach out to us. You can email us at info@crownsman.com. Go to crownsman.com. There's lots of information there as well. We love to promote industry. We love to promote companies. and we love to promote products. So reach out to us, join us, and of course subscribe and do all that to watch more specials. We've got plenty more coming to you. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.